My father threatened to cut off my tuition if I didn't attend my brother's wedding. He didn't expect what I revealed. What would you do if the same people who barely acknowledged your existence for years suddenly expected you to play the part of a devoted family member just for one day? Sounds like a tough ask, right? That's exactly where I found myself not too long ago, but I guess that's just how family can be, especially mine. Let me rewind a bit and explain. My name is Jonas, and if you haven't guessed it already, I come from a highly dysfunctional family. Actually, I'm not even sure if I should call it that. What do you call the people who brought you into the world and then ditched you emotionally once they found a shinier version of you? Does that even count as family? To avoid going in circles, let me put it plainly. I could have had a happy family life if my parents had treated both of their children with equal love and respect. But no, my parents were biased jerks. There's no sugarcoating it, and I was the child they chose to leave in the background. All because my brother, Roman, came out the better one. Roman was a perfectly healthy, ridiculously cute baby that immediately stole the spotlight. Meanwhile, I was the small, unimpressive infant no one really cared to coo at or hold. And somehow that was enough for my parents, Patrick and Marin, to decide who deserved the spotlight in the family. From the moment Roman was born, he became their golden boy, their little treasure, the star of the show. And me? I was the extra, the quiet character lingering in the background, forgotten and overlooked. You can imagine how bleak my childhood must have been. My parents didn't abuse me physically, but they may as well have, through neglect, indifference, and emotional abandonment. I was just there, fed, clothed, sent to school, but that was it. Meanwhile, Roman was spoiled rotten, with all the attention, love, and new toys he could dream of. He grew up basking in that attention, and it made him an entitled brat, a self-absorbed, smug little prince who acted like the world revolved around him. And it didn't help that everyone around us reinforced that idea, especially our parents. Naturally, the dynamic between Roman and me was pure chaos. I was the reserved, quiet kid. He was the younger brother who somehow made it his mission to make my life miserable. Yes, you heard that right. I was bullied by my younger brother. Roman found joy in ruining things for me. He'd throw massive tantrums if I was supposed to go somewhere, or had plans, just so our parents would side with him and cancel whatever I was doing. If I had something I liked, he'd snatch it. If I wanted to choose a TV show, he'd protest, and he'd always win. And with parents like ours, of course he got away with it, every single time. So yeah, growing up was rough. There's one moment I'll never forget. I was in 3rd grade, and had just gotten straight A's on my report card. I was over the moon. For once, I thought maybe I'd get a little praise. A proud smile from my mom, a pat on the back, something. I handed her my report card, brimming with pride. She looked at it, said a flat, "That's good," then went on to gush over a ridiculous little drawing Roman had made. A crooked dog if I remember correctly, and insisted we hang it on the fridge. My straight A report card, it went into the kitchen drawer, the one where all the unimportant papers went to die, and that was the norm. Roman called the shots, where we went on family vacations, what we ate, what movies we watched. Anytime I tried to voice a preference, I was shut down. Roman of course would rub it in. I was nothing more than the supporting character in his spotlight, so you probably get why I was so desperate to escape. I couldn't wait to get out. Then came my shot, college. By some miracle, or really, by working my butt off, I earned a scholarship to one of the top universities in the country. Not just top in the state, top in the world. It was the kind of place that guaranteed a great future if you put in the effort. And I was ecstatic. It felt like my golden ticket out. But my parents? They immediately shut it down. Why? You guessed it, Roman. They sat me down and told me they didn't want me attending some out-of-state school, even if it was prestigious. They wanted me to enroll at the local college instead. Their reason? Roman might feel inferior if I went away to a big-name university while he stayed home. Seriously, he could have studied like I did, worked hard like I did. But instead of encouraging him to do better, my parents wanted me to hold back. It was as if they finally realized I might outshine their precious golden boy, and they couldn't let that happen. No matter how much effort I put in, it seemed like they were actively trying to sabotage my success. Supporting me would disrupt their carefully crafted narrative, where Roman was the best, the brightest, the most beloved. But I wasn't about to let them win this time, so I played along. I told them I'd go to the local college, but I insisted on staying in the dorms to get the full college experience. They agreed, way too eagerly. They thought they'd won, but they hadn't. I took my scholarship, and went to the prestigious university anyway. Moved to another state, started my new life, and the best part? That top-tier school offered the finance program I wanted in just 2 years, instead of 4. So not only did I escape, but I was on track to graduate early. It was the best decision I ever made. While my parents thought I was studying nearby, I was thriving far away. The scholarship covered 70% of my expenses, and the money my dad kept sending me, thinking it was for tuition, helped cover the rest. After graduation, I landed a 6-figure job almost immediately. I've been working for over a year now, and I'm already close to a promotion. And the cherry on top? My dad is still sending me money, believing I'm enrolled in the local college. I haven't told him otherwise. Is it a little messed up? Maybe. But after everything they put me through, the years of neglect, the emotional abuse, the constant favoring of Roman, I consider it karma. I barely talked to them over those years. A few check-in calls, 1 or 2 quick visits during the holidays to keep suspicions low. That's it. And you know what? They didn't seem to care. As long as Roman was around, I was irrelevant. But it was peaceful and freeing. Sure, I sometimes felt the sting of not having a real family, but that sadness was outweighed by the relief of not having to endure their toxic presence anymore. That peace, however, shattered recently. It all began when my father called out of the blue and told me Roman was getting married. He wanted me to come home, not just for the ceremony, but a few days early, to help with preparations. I didn't know what to feel. After years of being ignored and overlooked, my father suddenly said he wanted everyone to be there for Roman's big day. He even called me part of the family. I won't lie, I teared up. But then reality hit. These were the same people who hadn't even noticed I'd left the state. The same people who, even now, had no idea I'd already graduated, and was earning more than they ever imagined. Was I really about to walk back into their lives, just to be ignored again? To play a supporting role in Roman's wedding? So here I was, stuck in a dilemma. Do I go, pretend everything is fine, or do I stand my ground, and stay away for good? After a couple of days spent thinking it over, I finally made my decision. I wasn't going. I didn't owe them a thing, and I sure as hell wasn't going to throw myself back into the pit of emotional manipulation I'd spent years trying to escape. So, I sent my father a simple text. I won't be able to make it, no excuses, no explanations, just a clear message. I half expected silence, but I should have known better. Within the hour, my phone was flooded with messages. First came my mother, playing the guilt card like a pro. She asked if I really wanted to miss Roman's special day, if I truly wanted to be that brother, the one who didn't show up. She said Roman would be heartbroken and that it would mean the world to him to have his older brother there. She even pulled the "you only get one family" line. Please. Roman had never shown an ounce of interest in any of my milestones, let alone supported me. And yes, you only get one family, if that family treats you with love and respect. Mine didn't. So I replied to her too, I'm not coming. When the guilt trips failed, my father took his shot. At first, he tried to be calm and diplomatic, tossing out lines like family should stick together during important times. And this is about unity. But when I didn't budge, he got desperate. Then he got nasty. He called me, his voice tense with frustration, and told me flat out if I didn't come to Roman's wedding, they'd stop paying my tuition. There it was, the threat. He said they couldn't allow people to gossip about one of their sons not attending the wedding. It would look bad. Neighbors would talk. It would ruin their image. Not Roman's happiness. Not our family bond. Not my well-being. Just appearances. That's all that mattered to them. How they were seen. That's when I completely lost my patience. I couldn't believe it. They were seriously threatening to pull my college funding, just to make me show up to a wedding I had no emotional connection to. The irony? I didn't even need their money. I told my father, go ahead, stop paying. I'm not going to the wedding, and nothing you say will change my mind. He still didn't know I'd already graduated, that I was earning more than he ever had, that I'd outgrown every little string he thought he still held over me. I knew I'd eventually have to tell them, but in that moment, I was enjoying watching the mask slip. His anger was almost comical. He started shouting about how ungrateful I was, how I'd always been difficult, and how he was going to withdraw my name from the local college to teach me a lesson. He spoke like that was some kind of death sentence, as if pulling me from a school I had never attended would somehow ruin my life. Honestly, I couldn't stop laughing. I could have told him the truth then and there. But where was the fun in that? So I let him go on, let him fume, let him stew in his own delusion. Now I'm just waiting for the fallout. For the moment he storms into the college to withdraw me and finds out I was never enrolled. It's going to be delicious. I haven't heard from him since that call, but I know it's coming. That second wave of rage when the truth slaps him in the face. And I can't wait. Anyway, I'll keep you posted when that happens. Update. 1 day later. Well, that didn't take long. Just a day after I posted my last update, it all hit the fan. My phone rang early in the morning. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. I knew it was him. And yep, it was my father, absolutely livid. He wasted no time. "Where the hell have you been?" he barked. "What did you do with all the money I gave you for college?" It was like listening to a toddler have a meltdown because someone took away their favorite toy. Only this time, it was a grown man having a complete breakdown over not getting his way. Turns out he had gone to the local college. He marched in there, full of righteous fury, ready to cancel my enrollment, to teach me a lesson for defying him. Only surprise, the school had no record of me. Not a trace. The man must have looked like a total fool. He admitted it during the call, his voice trembling with fury and humiliation. He wanted answers. He wanted to know where I'd been all this time and what I'd done with the money. I didn't even try to sugarcoat it anymore. I told him everything. That I'd moved out of state. That I'd been on a scholarship. That I graduated a year ago. And yes, I told him that the money he'd sent me had helped cover the rest of my expenses, and that I was grateful for it. Then came the real bombshell. I told him I was earning a 6-figure salary and doing better than he ever imagined. At first, there was silence on the line. Then came the disbelief. "Are you joking?" "No," I said. "I'm serious. I make more than you now." I could feel the disappointment radiating through the phone. Not because he was genuinely shocked or even proud. No, because he knew he had lost control. The leash he thought he had around my neck had snapped clean off. And just as I expected, he exploded. He called me ungrateful. He ranted about how he'd done so much for me. And this was how I repaid him. Done so much. Was he talking about the years of being treated like a ghost? The endless praise for Roman, while I was barely acknowledged? The time he made me sacrifice my dreams to protect Roman's fragile ego? Please. Then, in the most bizarre turn of events, he said the only way he'd ever forgive me was if I showed up to Roman's wedding, so there wouldn't be any scandal or gossip about the family. I couldn't believe it. Even now, all he cared about was appearances. I told him I didn't need his forgiveness, that I had no interest in being a prop in his farce of a happy family. He tried to walk it back, getting all sentimental, begging me to reconsider, saying this was about family, but I'd had enough. I told him point blank, there was no way I was going to the wedding of the same person who had made my childhood miserable. Then I dropped the final blow. "I'm done. Don't contact me again." He was stunned, but I didn't stop there. I told him if they wanted to continue treating Roman like their one and only son, fine. They could keep him, because as far as I was concerned, I no longer had parents. Then I hung up and blocked his number. And that's where I'm at right now, completely cut off from the toxic mess I used to call family. It's bittersweet, I won't lie. A small part of me always hoped they'd change, that they'd realize what they had done, that they'd finally treat me like I mattered. But I've stopped holding my breath. At least now I have peace. And if things go well, maybe I'll even start building a family of my own someday. One that actually knows how to love. It's been over a month now since I officially cut all ties with my family. I thought that would be the end of the drama, that they'd get the message and finally leave me alone. Of course, I underestimated just how persistent they could be. A few days ago, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something told me to pick up this time. Maybe I was just curious. Maybe a small part of me still had a soft spot. It was my mother. She was sobbing. Like, truly hysterical. I hadn't spoken to her since I blocked both her and my father. I thought maybe something serious had happened. An emergency. Maybe even a tragedy. But it wasn't anything like that. Between sobs, she started telling me how much she missed me. How she just wanted her son back. She said it didn't matter what had happened in the past. She just wanted us to be a family again. It caught me off guard. Where had all this energy been when I told them I was done? Where was this concern when I was packing my bags for college? Completely unnoticed. When I spent years being treated like I didn't exist. Now suddenly, she wants to repair things. It didn't feel right. So I cut the call short, saying I'd get back to her later. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling. Something wasn't adding up. So I did what anyone with a gut feeling would do. I reached out to my aunt, my mom's sister. She's always been the most grounded person in the family. If something was going on, she'd know. And boy, did she have a story to tell. Apparently, Roman's wedding had been a full-blown disaster, a massive disaster. Turns out his seemingly perfect fiancée, she was a con artist, a full-fledged scammer. Before the wedding, she managed to convince Roman, my parents, and several other relatives to invest their savings into a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. It was of course a scam. She took the money, every last dollar, and disappeared without a trace. No wedding, no happily ever after. Just an empty venue, and a lot of very broke, very angry people. But it didn't stop there. According to my aunt, my father's already struggling business took another massive hit around the same time. He got into it with an employee and his family. Something about a bad deal or an unpaid debt, and it cost the business big time. They were hemorrhaging money. Then everything started to click. This was why my father had been so desperate to have me at Roman's wedding. Not because he suddenly cared, but because he wanted to showcase our perfect family and keep up appearances in front of friends, colleagues, and investors. It was all about image. And now that image had crumbled. But wait, there's more. In a last-ditch effort to save the business, my parents had apparently taken out a huge loan. They used the house as collateral, and surprise, that blew up in their faces too. Now they were about to lose the house. According to my aunt, they had already moved into a tiny rundown studio apartment, all they could afford now. It was all unraveling. The picture was crystal clear. My mother hadn't called because she missed me. She'd called because they were broke, desperate, and running out of lifelines. And I was their only hope left, their safety net. The son they ignored for years suddenly became their best option. But I wasn't going to play that game. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their disaster just because I was finally doing well for myself. And the cherry on top? Now they were mad at Roman. Yup, the golden boy had finally fallen from grace. They were blaming him for everything. The wedding disaster, the lost money, the business failure. After all the years they spent building him up, shielding him from consequences, and treating him like royalty, they'd finally turned on him. It was satisfying, in a strange way. For once, they were seeing the consequences of the choices they'd made. But I stayed out of it. I didn't respond to my mother's call. I blocked her number again. I wasn't going to let her manipulate my emotions. Did that stop them? Of course not. A few days later, they showed up at my door. To this day, I still don't know how they got my address. Maybe they pressured some of my old friends. Maybe they hired someone. Doesn't matter. They were standing there, worn out, tired, looking nothing like the proud, smug parents I remembered. They started pleading, talking about family values, about how, as the eldest son, I had responsibilities, that now, they needed me, that it was my turn to support them. I didn't even let them finish. I slammed the door in their faces. I didn't want to hear it. Not after all these years. Not now, when the only reason they remembered I existed was because they were desperate. They stood there for a while, still begging, telling me they'd spent their last bit of money on a flight to see me, that they had no one else. That sucked for them. But it wasn't my problem, and believe it or not, it still wasn't over. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more ridiculous, Roman showed up. Yes, that Roman. The brother who spent our entire childhood making sure I felt worthless. The same guy who never lifted a finger for me, yet somehow always got everything he wanted. Now, he was standing on my doorstep, almost in tears. He said he missed me, that he missed having his big brother around, that he didn't know how things had gotten so bad between us, as if he'd forgotten the years he spent making my life miserable. He claimed Mom and Dad were about to cut him off too, blaming him for everything, for the failed wedding, for the money lost, for the house being gone, for the business collapsing, for it all. And maybe he wasn't wrong. They'd built their whole world around him, coddled him, worshipped him, protected him from every failure, until it all came crashing down. Now they needed someone to blame, and with me gone and out of reach, Roman had become the only target left. He begged me for help, said he didn't know where else to go, that he just wanted to fix things between us, that he didn't have anyone anymore. I let him talk. Then I looked him in the eyes and said, "You should have thought about that before you made my life hell." He tried again, getting emotional, saying he never meant for things to turn out like this. But I'd heard enough. I told him to leave, that I didn't want any more surprise visits, and that if any of them showed up again, him, Mom, Dad, I'd call the police. Then I closed the door and locked it. Since then I haven't heard from any of them. No more calls, no texts, no knocks at the door, just silence. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Of course there's a part of me that still feels the ache, a kind of hollow sadness that things turned out this way, that I'll never have the kind of family I used to dream about, the kind that loved me just for being me. But I've made peace with it, because I also know I deserve better than what they gave me. For so long I held out hope that one day they'd wake up, that they'd see me, appreciate me, that they'd realize I wasn't some backup character in Roman's story. But that day never came, and I'm done waiting. I've carved out a life for myself now, one full of promise, peace, and potential. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I refuse to let anyone drag me back into their chaos, just because we share the same blood. Family isn't about genetics, it's about support, respect, loyalty, love, and if they couldn't offer that when it mattered, they don't get a second chance now that it's convenient. So yes, I'm done. The door is closed, for good this time. And maybe someday, I'll create the kind of family I always wanted, with people who choose to love me, the way it should have always been.